In 2012, something changed. Not in one country, not in one school, not in one family. Everywhere, at the same time, all at once. And we are only now beginning to understand what happened. After more than a decade of stability, the mental health of teenagers plunged in the early 2010s. Rates of depression rose by 134%. Anxiety rose by 106%. Self-harm rose sharply. Suicide became the second leading cause of death for young people under 24 in the United States. 20% of 12 to 17-year-olds had at least one major depressive episode. The CDC called the findings devastating. This was not a blip. This was not one bad year. This happened in country after country after country at the same time. So what happened in 2012? In 2012, smartphones became universal for teenagers. Instagram launched in 2010, Snapchat in 2011. Twitter was already everywhere, and at exactly the same moment, the play-based childhood that had defined human development for thousands of years was replaced by what psychologist Jonathan Haidt calls the phone-based childhood. Children went from spending their afternoons outside, unsupervised, taking risks, making mistakes, solving problems with other children, to spending them alone, in their rooms, on a screen, being fed content designed to keep them there as long as possible. The research identifies more than a dozen ways this rewiring interferes with how children develop. Sleep deprivation. Children using phones at night sleep significantly less and significantly worse. Social comparison. The constant measurement of your real life against everyone else's curated highlight reel. Loneliness. School loneliness increased in 37 countries simultaneously in the early 2010s. And perhaps most significantly, the loss of unsupervised play. The thing that teaches children how to handle conflict, how to take risks, how to fail and keep going. A generation that never learned those things arrived at adulthood without the tools to handle it. Something happened to the mental health of children around the world at the same time that smartphones became universal. And whatever caused it, it has not been fixed. Australia passed a law in 2025 banning children under 16 from social media. The United Kingdom followed. More countries are considering it. Whatever you think of those laws, they exist because governments looked at the same data and decided that doing nothing was no longer an option. The question is not whether something happened to this generation. The question is, what are we going to do before it happens to the next one?
Can you see by the dawn guys, welcome to the program. Do me a finger, will you please? Please like, share, follow, subscribe, whatever you feel like doing, and follow along with the program. Today's more just kind of a candid discussion. You know, the midterms are coming up, 84 days away from the time of this broadcast. And I want to bring everything we've been through together in our discussions about elections and ballots and everything that goes on into sharp focus. It's not really a technical discussion at all. You don't have to have a technical degree. You don't have to be a lawyer or a professor or a choir teacher or a math expert or anything. You just have to use your eyeballs. And probably what's even more rare, sometimes it seems more rare than eyeballs, is just common sense. Just some common sense. So we're going to apply some common sense to about what we're about to face in the midterms. By the way, today's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Goldco. It's an easy proposition. I'm just asking you to go to jovanlovesgold.com. That's it. I want you to request your free gold and silver kit so you can understand why a portion of your assets that you have held back for security reasons should be in gold and silver, because we are going to move to a digital economy. That means everything's going to be trackable or whatever. Things that are going to be kind of left out that loop is going to be gold and silver, and why you should have, right, at least a little bit of it in your possession. Please go to jovanlovesgold.com. That's why I partner with the fine folks at Goldco. Feed your brain, understand what's going on. Okay, I'm going to give you just a quick break. For anybody that's trying to understand what we're up against in elections, anybody just trying to make sense of how and why it happens, this is just a common sense dialogue among us friends here. But I want to show you the real state of affairs. I know we've been up against a hell of a battle, but I just want to kind of draw it into perspective, because we're about to head into the midterms, and you need to understand this, by the way, for all of you that have gotten your three-toed dragon, you understand the war and data centers and stuff. Thank you for sending it to #1 new release. This is what you need to know about the data centers, whether they're going to ruin the world, take over the world, or whatever the case may be. Also, those of you that understand what technology is doing to our children, thank you for driving it again to bestseller, The Gollum Effect. Precious pixels, deadly devices. If you have a child, a grandchild, niece, nephew, if you're a parent, teacher, counselor, pastor, whatever the case may be, you need to read this book. And by the way, guys, thank you for going in and putting your ratings. It's so important for you to leave your reviews. Thank you for doing that. Please do that. It just helps more people find the book. And here very shortly, we're going to be talking about my newest release, Blind Faith, Modern Religion and Church, in 140 characters or less, is killing American faith. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, how close you can be to your faith and understanding. It's your duty to God. And I've talked about it many times on my broadcast. I had to get this out of my system. I'd been working on it for a long time, and that's why I hustled up and got it done. So anyway, we're going to be talking about the midterms. It's here. And what we're facing. And what's going on. You're going to get about 3 minutes, get everybody involved, and then let's just have a simple conversation.
their throne. Flip-flops, bathrobe, prepaid phone. Lights his grill like a wizard spell. Y'all late for the council of Taco Bell. Frodo on a four-wheeler, barefoot tank top. Ring on a keychain from the pawn shop. Sam's in the back with a 12-pack stash, yelling, I make tater salad, y'all smash. Welcome to the trailer park of the range, where one does not simply borrow my things. You shall not pass at the gravel road gate, unless you got beer or you owe me from 08. Motors that live with the burned out swings. We're the redneck fellowship of the range. Aragon's name on his work shirt reads. Earl drives a rusted out truck with a rebel girl. Lego's got a mullet, bleach blonde tips. Shotgun ain't true, spitting sunflower spits. Gimli's in a cut-off beard like steel. Tiny little legs on his big old grill. They argue about NASCAR, spitting a cup. Whoever wins beer pong's the king, step up. Welcome to Trailer Park of the Range, where one does not simply borrow my things. You shall not pass at the gravel road gate, unless you got beer or you owe me from 08. Motors that live with the burned out swings. We're the redneck fellowship of the range. Bormer screams, one does not simply walk past my cooler, that's my sweet tea. Tries the ring on just to get more dips, instantly trips over all his empties. Gollum in a kiddie pool full of ice, croaks my precious to the Cajun rice. Steals all the wings from the barbecue pit, filthy hobbit says never bring enough dip. Welcome to the trailer park of the range, where one does not simply borrow my things. You shall not pass at the gravel road gate, unless you got beer or you owe me from 08. Mordors that live with the burned out swings. We're the redneck fellowship of the range. Saramon's tower is a rusty crane, stealing cable off the neighbor's lane. Orcs in white beaters, mud on their boots, blasting fireworks at the chickens and coops. And Adrienne runs a vape shop stand. Palm read a tarot spray tan can. Says if I took that ring, boy, I'd own this park and your ex-wife's ride. They hitch a busted boat to a shopping cart. Road trip, boys, this is where it starts. Mount Doom's just a county dump at night, glowing orange from the Christmas lights. Frodo says, Sam, if I don't pull through, clear my tabs at the drive-thru. Sam says, I ain't letting you go alone. We still got combo meals on loan. You shall not pass on the speed bump hill. Trailer park, Middle Earth, standing still. One ring lost in the septic tank spring. Just another day in the trailer park of the range.
Okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to have a conversation because the midterms are coming up. It's a simple conversation. Pop quiz! After all of this time, and you're seeing a lot of things coming out, you know, all the illegals on the road, tell me the things you're noticing that are finally being proven true. I'll watch across the different chats, but what are the things that you're learning that are finally 100% absolutely true, stuff that we've been talking about for 6 years, that are coming to pass, that you now know are a real thing? I'll give you kind of a head start. Like, you now know it's a real thing that when I came out and said that they're automatically giving illegals social security numbers, they tell them to go get a driver's license, an ID, and Motor Voter is automatically dropping them in as a registered voter. You now know that's true, right? You now know that's true. You also now know that the states are battling turning over their voter rolls. They just do not want to do it. You also know for 6 years they denied the paper anywhere else except where we exactly got it, one time in history, will probably be the only time in history it's ever happened, the actual paper ballots to understand what happened. You now know that with all these illegals on the voter rolls, you now know, James O'Keefe did just even more programs, they're voting. They're finding not only are they there, but some are voting. Now, caveat there, I don't think it's illegals voting. I think it's just getting the illegals on the list. And because we now know these mail-in ballots will go to like a Catholic church or something, thousands and thousands and thousands of ballots, one address could have 30,000 people at it. Those mail-in packets disappear. Nobody seems to be able to know if they were destroyed or not or whatever. And if you can get a ballot packet in bulk, then those ballots can be voted by just voting them, putting them in a secure envelope, scribbling some sort of BS signature in it, and dropping it in a drop box. We kind of know this is right? I mean, come on. There's no doubt now. You see President Trump fighting this every day. We know what it is. So I want to take you on a visual journey. Now, I'm not going to try to teach you any 6-degree polynomial crap because the system knows your eyes glaze over at that. And you go, I've never heard of a 6-degree polynomial, and so I must not know about this stuff. Well, in this particular circumstance, you do know about this stuff. And we now know there were no tracking devices put in ballots. Like the one guy says, we had QFS on blockchain. That's crap. You now know, absolute fact, the Antifa Zoom calls, total horseshit. You now know that the 6-degree polynomial has a 1 in 80 billion chance of being correct. It cannot be even proven. It's just junk. You now know that little jump in the F chart, well, you see the insertion, you now know when you understand elections, they run election day first, and then they do all the mail-in ballots. All of them look like that. You now know that you can't prove anything on a machine. Main reason, even if you did, all the rules are voluntary. You know that. They're misdemeanors. And so that means if somebody on the machines even did something to muck with 1 million votes, it's a singular $1,000 fine misdemeanor. Whereas you muck with 1 million physical ballots, it's 1 million individual cases of both state and federal felonies, period. You know that. You now know all this stuff. So I've been searching for a way to try to explain this so you could really understand what's going on and how it works. I know you know it, but I've found a way I think I can visually help you understand, because this is going to come into play in the midterms. And if you watch anything across social media in any way, you even see conservatives, they're all ragging on President Trump. He's owned by Israel. He's this, he's that. His ratings are down. He should be investigated. It's all a con. And then you see Owen Schroer. I've never watched any of stuff. I just know he's part of InfoWars. You saw Alex Jones come out and say the president needs to be booted under Article 25. You're seeing all this crap. And Owen Schroer, who was pardoned by Trump for January 6th stuff, now coming out and go, it's writing's on the wall, Trump's bad, we all need to vote Democrat. You're seeing the con. Now, I'm telling you this because I've always told you the con's very evident. Just want to remind you of this one chart because it's relevant in what we're going to talk about, okay? When Obama went in and he was the messianic rock star of the Democrat Party, he got 69 million votes at the close of his election, being elected the first time. In his second term, it was 65 million votes. Hillary, against Trump, Hillary got 65 million votes. Then the system did what it did in 2020, and it shot up to 81 million votes. That's the crisis middle finger FU. And then, of course, there was Kamala in 2024, which the bullshit story. 30 white hats caught it all and stopped it all. I just got to call that out. What a crock of bullshit. Because if 30 white hats caught it in process votes being changed, there'd be 30 witnesses on the federal stand showing how it worked because they caught it all. But oops, they're all anonymous. Bullshit. And then, of course, now, and you can check this on your own, you can go to the Election Assistance Commission. They have added 7 million votes to Kamala. Remember that number. They've added over 7 million votes to Kamala since election night. And we all know that the machines didn't run. And we also know if it's illegal voting in ballot boxes, the machines don't make an illegal come in and do it. So you all know this stuff. So I want to find a way to visualize it. So the first visual we're going to start with is right here. I want you to visualize this as balls. Yeah, the balls everybody should have had in fighting this election at the government level, but they have no balls, so we're going to give them some balls. This is the base premise I want you to understand. I'm going to switch my screen here in a minute. The big ball is the general election. The big ball at the top of the pyramid is the general election. That's the play for it all. Big deal. I'm going to find something on my screen here. Hang on. Window, where the hell are you? Okay, hang on. I got to find a particular, image. Well, why in the hell can't I find it now on my screen? That's weird. Oh, there it is. Okay. So here's where we're going to start. And this is what I want you to understand just as a very rudimentary view of our elections. Everything's visually driven. You don't need any math degree. On your screen, you see a ball. That is the United States of America's election at any time. One ball. We're speaking in terms of general election. That's the ball. That's the big kahuna that decides everything. But what you need to do is you need to look at what really occurs when it comes to these elections. So that one ball is running basically an election in 50 states. So these balls represent 50 states. Okay? You got one election run across all of our 50 states. Now, the next thing you need to understand in this process, okay? Just understand it's simple. The 50 states are actually now broken up into 3,144 parts. One election, everybody kind of focuses on the election. They want you to focus on foreign countries. They want you to focus on things you can't understand. That's why I'm trying to make it simple. But it is one election for 50 states. But it's actually run by 3,144 counties. This is the playing field. This is the playing field. 3,144 counties. Now, what the system doesn't want you to understand, and where most people cannot look at this granularly, you take all of those counties, you got to understand how many precincts there are. If we were looking at a visual representation here, and this is not even enough boxes, folks, to even show you the scale, it would just be a ridiculous black blur. But just using this figure here, this is basically, 170, and I got to scroll down my screen to get it here right now. Hang on. All these counties, there's 175,000 of these things, okay? 3,144 counties. but there's 175,000 machines in play. Now, machine's not the right word. The right word here is precincts. When you have your precincts divided up and you have to have IDs come in, this is where everything has to occur. Not really at the county level, but at the precinct level. So, in any one election, this is really what's in play. There's 175,000, I'm rounding up, points of light. Okay? 175,000 points of light. Now, why do I tell you that? Because I want you to understand it's so spread out. They use all of those numbers against us because here is all it takes to determine the outcome of an election. When I take every single vote and I chart it, it becomes one big black eye. But when you look at all of those votes cast in those 175,000 precincts, that's why I show you these places. When you look at everything cast there and you plot them, this is what it looks like. Now, can you see that little bitty dot in the center? Put it in chat. Can you see the little bitty dot in the center of the page? Now, that little bitty dot in the center of the page is what decided the outcome of the 2020 election. It was one election. Yes, we run elections in all our states. Yes, we have 3,144 counties, but it's all controlled by 175,000 precincts. But when you just reduce it to a visual, because literally all of the black dots run together, you can no longer see the balls. And you take all of the votes that came in, and you look at what actually decided the 2020 election, it's that blue dot. Now, I want you to understand that in scale because it's very important, because most people think it's moving huge things. It's got to be some outlandish math choir degree of law, tech CEO, computation. No, you just have to learn how to manage that little bitty blue ball. Because when you understand how to manage that little bitty blue ball, that's it. Here's every vote for 2020 plotted. The dots run together. And people think, well, of course you can't freaking manage 175,000 precincts. It's too hard. Nobody can do it. There's no way you can do it. Look how many people it would take. Well, this is where I give you pushback. Because, see, the secret to the United States elections and selecting our lawmakers is really very easy. It's painfully easy when you understand how it's done. Doesn't take any sophisticated degrees, doesn't take anything, doesn't take any graphics of servers going back and forth to all these countries. It just to understand that control center. That's why I put it in the center. It's the control center. Okay? Now, if you were to look at it in a precinct, and if you were to understand that a black dot is a vote, and the amount of blue dots, we're just calling a blue dot an illegal vote. When I say an illegal vote, I'm not meaning an illegal vote at it. I mean, it's a nefarious ballot that got into the system, right? So if I was going to go back and I was going to show you these precincts, these 175,000 precincts, and you were to understand it basically at the precinct level of how do you control the blue dot, the control mechanism is actually small because it ends up looking like this. I'm going to give you time to kind of zoom on your screen. What I want you to understand in scale, when you see all of these dots, do you see the top left corner? Take a look at your screen. I know you'll kind of have to cross and flex your eyes, but can you see the top left corner? If we took that blue dot and we were going to show you at the precinct level, the control mechanism at the precinct level, all it does is it looks like this. That's it. It just looks like, it's not complicated. When you understand there's a control center, and then you kind of back out to the precinct level and look at the precinct level, you don't really have to move a lot. Can you understand here? You're not moving mountains. They want to convince you it's complicated for two reasons. They want to convince you it's complicated to tell you there's so many people involved and look at all the workers and look at all this stuff that you get lost in the numbers. And you begin to believe the myth, wow, our elections can't really be rigged. They'll operate on the second side of the equation. I've told you this. They'll always give you a bad guy. It was Dominion and Antifa. And they'll always give you just these wild, outlandish descriptions of how it happened. And I'm only so smart, and I met him, and I'm surprised I met anybody even smarter than me, but he may be, well, maybe he's as smart as I am. That was Lone Raccoon. But it's not. Maxine Waters can do this. And so when we pull back out and look at the precincts and we understand the overall control mechanism, it becomes painfully obvious this is all they have to do. This is your last look at this one because I'm going to explain it. This is your last look at this one because I'm going to explain it. Take a look at it. This is a singular precinct. Okay? Look at the top left. Blue in this case is merely representing you got a ballot in the system that is not valid because it was used nefariously. More than likely, it's an actual legal ballot. It's a legal ballot voted illegally. Now, what is the two things that you've learned in 6 years the system never wants you to look at? They will promote all these theories, all this stuff, all these countries. They'll promote all that crap. But there's two things that we, the people, always get denied. Where we say it's this or we want to see this. What are the two things? One is the paper ballot. Unanimously denied. Nope. We'll let you look at an image that we say it is. And what's the second thing? The voter rolls. Now, I just want to see if we can come to consensus on they will not allow the physical ballot. That's the one thing you got to stay away from. And they, even though they have laws on the books, they delete those son of a bitches as fast as they can. The other thing are the voter rolls. Can we agree on that? Don't look at the ballots. Don't look at the voter rolls. Right? I mean, you kind of have proof. You're not going to get the ballots. You're not going to get the voter rolls. Now, the reason is that's the control center. That's it. That's the control center. Now, that little bitty dot represents this. The number on top of roughly 4.5 million votes is where the election was called for 2020. Okay? Where the election was called for 2020. When they called the election, which, by the way, you saw it, was the big Biden FU finger. Everybody knew it wasn't possible. But the election was called with a delta of basically 4.5 million votes. Now, why is there a second number on the screen? The second number on the screen, okay, is well after the election was done, over, called, and certified. They moved that number up. Sound familiar? Hang tight. So the system basically sold that Joe Biden had 4,500,000 more votes than Donald Trump. That's what this number is. That's what the little bitty blue dots up in the corner are looking at the precinct level. But an interesting thing happened. While everybody's distracted with January 6th, while everybody's distracted, it was the Dominion call and Antifa and PCAPs, we got it all, something very interesting happened. That number actually creeped up to 7,060,000. The race was called. The race was over. But as time went on, it creeped up to, well, Biden won actually by 7,060,000. Now, that's the control center. This is where I'm going to get real serious so you understand what it is. That is the little bitty blue dot control center. Look at that number on the bottom. How many have they added to Kamala since her election? This is Biden well after the fact. 2020. In 2024, what did they also do with Kamala? She too has been raised in excess of 7 million votes, all after the fact. They loaded them into the system. That's why Biden stuck out. They made sure they kept counting even after the election, putting that distance in there. But then, with Kamala's vote, with the numbers being called, magically she too has somehow been given 7+ million more votes. Now, I ask you a question. What are the odds that from election call, and we were all distracted, I wasn't even looking at this, all distracted with 6-degree polynomials and PCAPs and Antifa calls on January 6th, we never saw the creep. Well, we saw the creep. We never saw the creep of numbers. But yet, with Kamala, has the same magical creep of numbers. Well, that's the blue control dot. So now you got to try to look at, okay, what is the centroid of where this happens? Now we now know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the two things they forbid looking at are the actual ballots and the voter rolls. The very system that brought you PCAPs and everything else said, don't bother with the voter rolls. The very system that wants to stay relevant is not going to pass show your ID to vote. Now the SAVE Act can't do anything. The commonality is running out the clock. Well, let me show you where the blue centroid sits. That blue centroid sets specifically in 7 states and in 7 counties. What are those 7 states? Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. This centroid controlled, because we tend to think of it in mass, horrible, incredible, stunning numbers, there's no way to see it. Well, no, it's actually very easy to see because the control center has been built in 7 states, in 7 counties. Now, they're expanding it, don't get me wrong. These are the 7 states. What do these 7 states all have in common? Look at these 7 states. What do these 7 states all predominantly have in common? Do you know? They have some very interesting things in common as we now head into the elections. Well, you're probably guessing the first one, very lax voter ID laws. Commonality in these states. Another commonality is they have all of these states have basically no excuse mail-in voting, one of them being all mail-in. But the 7 places of centroid that control everything, these states, all of them have no excuse mail-in voting, or they are exclusively mail-in voting. And Arizona is typically exclusively, although they say it's not. It is exclusive now. Do you think that's a coincidence? Looking at these states, do you think it's a coincidence? Put it in chat, yes or no. Do you think that is, in the scheme of all the things, is that just a random coinkydink? Well, let's look at what else do they have in common. Aside from these 7 states having the center of power based in 7 counties that control this dot, they have the commonality of they all have mail-in voting, and all of them except one, because North Carolina is the new battleground, all of them have drop boxes. So they have mail-in voting uncontested. They have drop boxes uncontested. Only difference in there is Carolina, which is now working on it. However, what else do these 7 states have in common? You're watching it play out right now. What do they have in common? Every one of these states does not want to turn over their voter rolls and has sued the government's mandate to turn them over to be verified. So I'm going to ask you a question. We get caught in all these bullshit polynomials and dominions and Zoom calls. When you really understand how this works, and you really understand they all allow mail-in balloting, they're all allowing drop boxes, and every one of them is not, they're absolutely refusing to turn over their voter rolls for verification. Can you understand now, when you look at those states by precinct, that little bitty blue corner? See, because the real number comes down to this. If you look in the entire scope of the United States, all that has to happen in any one precinct, here's the sickness of it. You just have to get in 25 ballots in the system. That's it. Let me say that again. When you look at it, if you want to control the United States of America and you look at it at the precinct level, all you have to do is get 25 ballots in the system. Pop quiz. How do you get additional ballots in the system? That's all you have to do. What are the mechanisms to get an extra ballot that nefarious actors can use? Well, let's look if it begins. Number one, all you got to do is get their name on the voter rolls. That's all you have to do. The one thing that these states refuse to turn over, and the one thing that the Uniparty, the GOP, and all the bad actors on the right that swear they're in elections go out and tell the states, no, don't do the voter rolls. It's like sweeping a dirt floor. It's a special algorithm on the machine. That entire system that we've watched play out, they only fought against two things. You are not going to get the voter rolls, and you are not going to see the ballots. When it comes to physical proof, the one thing they ignore is when you show it in the physical ballots, they completely ignore it. See, this is how the command and control center works. Because our elections are controlled by these 7 states. And at the precinct level, all you have to do is in that little bitty corner up there at the precinct level, if you can just get that many ballots in, your little dot will control the elections. And I find it just very interesting that these states that control it are the same states that refuse to turn over their voter rolls to the government for verification, lax on voter ID, all have mail-in ballots and drop boxes, and all have massive surges in illegals. Now, even though it is against the law to mail mass ballots to one location, we found this in Arizona, an empty field, but somehow 2,000 ballots were mailed there, and it doesn't even have a mailbox. But the post person took those ballots to an NGO down the street, a nonprofit. Technically, that's against the law, but they don't want you to look at that. Now, let's say you can collect all these ballots. Because, see, the only thing you need is a person on the voter rolls. You don't need to verify that person, and that person doesn't even need to vote. You know they can be dead. We're finding those, which they said was a lie, but now you know is true. You know they did it in Social Security. Everything comes down to if you get them on the voter roll, because, see, it's the voter rolls that trigger the printing of the ballot. And that's why they all have mail-in voting with no excuse. That's why they all went to mail-in voting with no excuse. Because, see, if the voter roll's bad and you have mail-in voting, that ballot's going to be printed. And if that ballot can be printed and you actually know all the bogus addresses, well, then those ballots, which are ballot packets, can be picked up. We told you this. We coined the term ballot cracking. You take a legal ballot and you vote it illegally. How do you get that ballot back in the system? All you need is drop boxes, and all you need is extended time counting. So as you can see the tallies, yes, the machines are compromised because they show the information. They're not going into the machines and changing the votes. They're using just enough ballots they need to change the outcome of the election. That's it. It's a time hack. It's a simple ballot hack. But what I really find interesting when you really look at when all this began in mass scale, it actually happens to be the same number that they've now scooted up Kamala. Well, when you can take all those bad people and get them on, that's the big Biden FU finger. What's one way to keep, you got them on the rolls. You did it successfully. What's almost an ironclad way to make sure you can keep them on the rolls? Well, first off, you got to refuse to turn over your voter rolls. But see, in between, there's smokes and mirrors. Well, we know they're voters. Well, how do you know they're voters? Well, they kept on voting. They even voted on through to Kamala. These are regular voters, so they're real. But isn't it interesting? The number is almost coincidentally the same. This is how easy it is. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand it. You don't have to be a tech CEO, second in the world, bigger only, bested only by Google and all the bullshit you get sold. What they suffocated with pillows is this information, because this is what it is. That's it. It is that simple. You get those people across the border. You're not going to prosecute them. You need them. Angela Merkel just confirmed that the way she kept her party in power is by bringing in all the illegals, because they ultimately give them the right to vote. And that's how they stayed in power for so long. The writing's on the wall. So it's really simple. Import people who really aren't going to vote anyway. Get them at the border, play like you're doing your job, fill out a piece of paper, promise to show up to court that's basically backlogged 10 years. They're never going to do it. You got to go get an ID, which is kind of the law. You got to go get an ID. But when they get her ID, boom, they've automatically added them to the voter roll. And with the fact that they have mail in, no excuse, all you got to do is print the ballot. And because you know, and you can look at the databases and you can see where the bulk addresses are, because let me ask you a question. Now, here's what's really interesting. You already see it in all the NGOs. When the people come across the border and they're handing out phones and they're handing out debit cards, they basically tell the people, here is the address to use. Here's this address. Now go get an ID. Because what's the one thing they're not coming with? Well, they're not coming with an address. And they're not coming with a approved government ID. It's the two things they give them right as soon as they come across. The system knows those addresses. So what happens? When there's no excuse mail-in voting, they make sure that person's on the mail-in voting list. And those addresses they give are the people who are working in this system, churches, NGOs, etc. Now, those ballots have a value once they arrive. Somebody comes and picks up those ballots. Little money changes hands. Now they got the instrument of destruction. They open those ballots. They intentionally made signature verification bullshit. We showed you that. We showed you it's not your signature on your register. It's an amalgam of all these signatures so they can make any mark they want work, and they dial it up or down. And they just need that ballot to come back. So they sit back and watch. And as they need them, that's why they need more time to count. They start filling out the ballots. And then the little armies of people who get paid take those ballots in bulk, run them around to various drop boxes trying to hide them. And those people get paid as well, which is why they take a photograph of it. Look, I dropped off 50 photograph. Okay, pay me my money. That's it. That's how it works. It's that freaking simple. But it comes down to the two things they absolutely refuse. You're not going to see the ballot. You're not going to be able to look at the voter rolls. And it coincides with IDs are racist and trying to get more states to go to mail-in ballots. That's it, folks. That's how simple this stuff is. That's it. It's that simple. That's why none of the paper numbers match. But it's also why they sold everybody a bill of goods to look anywhere else. Look at Venezuela, look at Serbia, look at whatever. Because what happens is when you file your case on that and you go to court, you can never prove it. There's nothing to prove the evidence trail because you don't have an evidence trail. And they know once they open that ballot and count it and the envelope goes that way, which is immediately destroyed, and the ballot goes this way, which is 21, 22 to 24 months destroyed, you have nothing to follow. Because by then it's certified and you can't undo it. It doesn't matter. All they've got to do at the precinct level is get in 25 ballots per precinct. That's it. And our entire nation is run. What are the odds that every one of these states possess every one of these mechanisms needed for the control center to work? That's it, folks. That's it. It's that simple. Nobody along the lines, and you take those 175 precincts, that's why they say, oh, we have the most robust poll watching. What is a poll watcher watching? What is a poll watcher watching? Well, the day of the election, okay, whatever, people coming in and out, you're looking for Black Panthers or whatever. There's nothing to watch. Everything looks normal. And in a system of, you got 175,000 precincts, folks. Those 175,000 precincts predominantly have great, wonderful people in them. And those people are going, I'm not a fucking crook. I'm not doing any of this. And here's the story, folks. They're right. They're not doing any of this. It's a very small synthetic move. And this is all it takes to control the United States of America. And this is why all these years they wanted you to focus on machines. They raise up people you can't verify from anywhere to baffle you with bullshit, but they really only fight two things: the voter rolls and the ballots. With that said, it should be very obvious to you. That's how small the moves are. That is how small the moves are. It's all an information game. If you know where the fungibility is on the voter rolls, which is why we had to invent that type of audit to monitor it, and you know where have all the access on the voter rolls, and you got no excuse mail-in voting, all you got to do is print the ballot. Balloters, we just printed what the voter roll said. We just mailed what the voter roll said. That's it. That is how bad we're broken. White hats can't tell you shit. Now, here's a very interesting thing most people forget. This is kind of the kicker for me. But I want you to just look at this, okay? So I broke it down. It's a general election. Ready? We do that election in 50 states. We have 3,144 precincts controlling 3,144 counties, and we have 175,000 precincts. Now get ready to focus. Get ready to focus. I'm going to use two terms. The system changed the votes, and it was going back and forth in China and stuff. And here's where it went. Here's where they changed it and sent it back. Or it's Venezuela, it's Serbia, and 30 white hats, fucking 30,000 white hats, doesn't matter. And we stopped them from changing the votes. Now, what's the one thing people miss in that claim? See, they sold you that the votes get changed in the system. They sold you that it's done by the machines. Then they came back in 24 and sold you that we stopped it, we made sure Trump won. Let me give you a very simple question. If 30 white hats were to stop the bad votes from being counted, this is why I'm amazed. See, the more outlandish the story, the more people buy it. But what you can't do is you can't reduce it to its simplest element. If, in fact, 30 white hats made sure President Trump won the election in 2024, what information do the 30 white hats need? People never think about it. You just want heroes. You just want white hats. You just believe people that were ex-CIA informants or whatever they tell you. Okay, but let's just take that on face value. What do they need? Well, those same 30 white hats have to be able to look at 175,000 precincts transacting at any one time. When you understand the simplicity of this, you understand you're not looking backwards at 30 white hats. How do they look at 175,000 precincts simultaneously to know what's needed? They can't. How can they look at 175,000 precincts at the batch level? They can't. Let's just take Arizona. 10,435 individual batches of ballots spread across 750 points of light. Those are the precincts. They would have had to, being white hats, be in it. People never connect the dot. You want to believe a white hat stopped it. But if a white hat was to stop anything, what would a white hat have? In this precinct, at this time, in this batch, here was a vote that they changed, we know was bad, we flipped it back. It's bullshit. They know you're not going to look at it as in the mechanism. Because what they're actually telling you, here's what they're actually trying to get you to believe. We handpicked 30 white hats, and we have access to 50 states. Here's what they're trying to tell you. I want you to understand this. We have 30 white hats that are going to save this election. Those 30 white hats are monitoring 50 states. They're monitoring 3,144 counties, and they're monitoring 175,000 precincts to see it. Mike Lindell had the audacity to tell you we have it all for all 3,000 precincts, and you never put it together. How? And it's simply because this is how they use it. It's not how the precincts work. It's not how the batches work. You can't see all that data that way. You can only see tally results. That's it, right? And by the time anybody can see tally results, you really can't add or subtract. You just keep on having batches. So what did white hats stop? See, when the PCAPs were exposed as crap and faked, they had to go to the next level. And what was the next level? Well, you already believe they're flipping them and doing them. Oh, we caught them this time. And you never think of the simple fact they're trying to convince you that they had 30 people that had access to every single fucking vote through the system. And when they saw it hit the machine, miraculously somehow, and they recognized it was a bad vote, miraculously somehow, before it hit the foreign server, they stopped it and they made sure it didn't get changed. Well, that would be an evidence trail. But then you got to ask yourself, how did the white hats see it all? Because that in and of itself would be a crime. So how'd they know? And that's why all of the people blowing these whistles are CIA informants or FBIers or foreign countryers, because there's no prosecutability. But see, you have to think backwards in it, because the very simple fact they don't want you to know, it's a dot that small, it occurs in 7 states, it's exclusively mail-in ballot driven and drop boxes, and they only have to get 25 ballots a precinct to do it. And that all happens before the fucking machines. And that's the rig. It's that simple. All the other stuff is vaporware. And they all do the same thing. You should see it clear by now. You know the system avoid looking at the paper ballots at all cost. You know the system avoid cleaning the voter rolls at all cost. What's the one thing we taught? It's the paper ballots, and you got to get them off to the voter rolls. What's the one thing I advise President Trump on? Get rid of the voter rolls. That's how we have to do it. From liberal to middle to conservatives, all set up in this con. What did they also avoid? We're not going to acknowledge that it was caught in the ballots. We're not going to acknowledge that the ballots were audited and all the numbers were found. They weren't really mail-in ballots. It was crap. They flooded the system. It's all vaporware. And here we sat 84 days before the midterm, and I find it just fucking ironic that simple creep-up margin they did for Biden after the fact of 7 million plus is the same little revalidation margin they did for Kamala. And now if they get challenged on all these bad voters, they go, no way, look, they voted in a midterm, they voted in a state election, they voted again, they voted here. That's a real voter. We've got a record. All vaporware. And now you know. Now, with that said, I'm going to change course a little bit. I know you have questions. So the second part of my program here is I'm going to open it up to you on screen, put it on screen, ask your questions. But this is how they move our country. It is so simple, so painful. But that's why you don't need all these evidence variables. They're all distracting with variables. You only need to understand one thing. If it's on the roll, it's going to get a ballot. Quick pee-pee break, then I'm going to take your questions.
Are data centers going to destroy America? Will data centers and artificial intelligence rob our water supplies? Will it drive up our energy costs? What's fact? What's fiction? Here is the truth no one talks about. America must win the AI data center war or surrender the future to the great dragon. Award-winning, four-time best-selling author, technology, pioneer, and futurist, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer presents the definitive manual for winning this war against China, the three-toed dragon. Communist China's secret war to end American AI and data centers. China's relentless drive for AI dominance is no longer a distant threat. Through massive state-backed infrastructure, voracious energy consumption, and strategic control of global supply chains, the CCP is building an unstoppable technological empire. While America debates policy, China executes. This is not another tech trend. It is the decisive battlefield of the 21st century where data centers, power generation, cooling systems, and sovereign energy infrastructure will determine who controls intelligence, economic supremacy, and national security. This fact book, guidebook, handbook, and war plan cuts through the noise with meticulously researched intelligence on the hidden realities of AI data center demands. Exploding power requirements, industrial-scale water usage, heat island effects, liquid cooling breakthroughs, hydrogen and off-grid solutions, semiconductor vulnerabilities, and the strategic choke points China already exploits. It delivers actionable blueprints for American victory, from policy recommendations and energy independence strategies to practical deployment models for rural and sovereign systems that bypass fragile grids and foreign dependencies. For patriots, policymakers, energy entrepreneurs, technologists, and every citizen who refuses to live under digital authoritarianism, this is the essential field manual. America still holds the innovation edge, the resource base, and the will, but only if we act with urgency and clarity. The great dragon is moving at full speed. The time to seize victory in the AI data center war is now. Available on Amazon, hardbound, paperback, and ebook. Read it. Arm yourself. Win.
Okay. Number one, a lot of people doing cue card things. Oh, they were hung in Jag Court. Knock the crap off. See how easily the world gets distracted? This is why they win. This is why they win. This is why they give you distractions. Oh, they were all hung in Gitmo. This is why they win. When you do that stuff, you are buying into their program, which is their program. But what about 6-degree polynomials and whatever? That's it. Folks, it's done this simply. It is in your face and so clear. See, what you saw as all these people fighting to fix elections, we're going to hand count, we're going to do this, and we're going to do... It's a simple mechanism. Go back to the people that volunteered their time for the Arizona audit. They knew a lot of the ballots were bullshit. They knew ballots that were being counted as mail-in ballots had no fucking folds. Therefore, they were never mailed. All of these states, they kind of hop on it, and they made you sign. They told you it was an affidavit. They told you it was an affidavit. It never was. But you signed it because they got to convince you you're doing your duty. But when it came to court, none of those could be used. Why? Why? Because they deceived you in the format, which made them all. You were a witness to things, but they headed you off at the gate by making sure the form you signed, even though you witnessed things, all these states, you saw all these states roll up with affidavits. We have 40 some odd thousand of them. And you're told, well, the judges wouldn't look at them. No, the judge says, that's not an affidavit. That is spam. Why did they say it was spam? Because all of these same systems got you to go to apps. Use your app, type it in. My name's John. I saw a bad ballot. Signed, John. It can never be used in a court of law. They knew that. That is why you were flooded with apps and reporting stuff, etc., right? That's why you were flooded with that stuff. Go to the website. It is electioncrimebureau.fundus.donate. Fill out what you saw. You think you're doing something. What they're doing is they're keeping you frustrated because they know 100%. They now take your personal witness testimony and they neuter it immediately so it cannot be used in court because it's not a legal jurat. I just want to remind you of something. The only thing that they cut out of my audit in Arizona, because I planned it all, was as every single batch was being looked at and whatever, and if you're one of these people, God bless you, and you knew the paper was wrong, and you knew this says it's a mail-in ballot, but there's no fucking folds. The way the system was designed is as each batch comes, a little reporter comes over to you and records your testimony. Okay? They got you, they record it. John Smith watching ballots. You basically record your testimony. In between batches, that testimony is transcribed. It's very short, put into a proper legal jurat. They come back to you and say, is this your testimony for that batch? You just did it. You go, yes, it is. They know who you are. They have your ID, and they, boom, legal jurat it. Now, why would I do that? If you got 1,000 people on the floor, 1,000 people on the floor, and they are doing 10,300 batches. Let me just do the number for shits and giggles. Hang on. You got 1,000 people on the floor, all the different positions. Everything you touch, because everything's driven by batch. When the batch is done, when the batch is photographed, when the batch is counted, when whatever counted, you're at a table. There's only 6 of you per each one, right? They come up, take your testimony, they transcribe it, bring it right back to you in legal jurat form. You sign it. They notarize it. Now it's a permanent legal record. At the end of the audit, how many signed legal instruments usable in court would we have had? 10,435,000. Of I witnessed it, I saw no folds, and it said it was a mail-in. I witnessed it, it was a color ballot, but it wasn't even on the right paper. I witnessed it, they said this was a walk-in, which will have irregular folds. It wasn't a walk-in. You would have had 10,435,000 legal prosecutable instruments. But that's the one thing they removed. Why did they remove that? Because all you would have to do is submit the legal jurats, and it would have 100% confirmed exactly what our system saw at the human level. So you wouldn't just have my team and I showing you, okay, here it is. None of the worked right. Here it is, here it is, here it is, here it is. You would have had 10,435,000 legal instruments proving everything we said with the human eye. And by the way, when you got 6 people in that daisy chain, for each batch, not including the supervisors, but just the eyes on, they would have all seen the same thing. Which basically means when you look at it as they ran in the batch, because that's how they do it, look at every batch, would have had thousands of legal jurats backing each back to exactly what we said. And that's the only thing they removed. That's it. The thing they did to the public at large is they pushed it to apps, they pushed it to websites. Tell us what you see. Tell us what you see. It's all bullshit. The reason you can see it's bullshit, it makes you think I'm part of it and I'm doing work. That's what they need you to do, right? But what were they really doing? They were making sure that when push come to shove, if any of it ever came to court, there was nothing to legally back it that would have standing in court. Then when you also look at that, fucking with the ballot is in fact the felony, they basically made you look away from the felony. See, everything on the machines, you can look it up yourself. Election Assistance Commission, VVSG, voluntary voting systems. They never say machines because they're not. Voting machines, multiple prison bars. Bullshit. It's systems. Voluntary. Why do they say voluntary? Because there's no enforcement. So they herd the entire country to the unenforceable. Penny, God bless you. God bless you. All of it goes to election integrity. It all keeps these files alive. I sit here and I try to think of all the work we did and have, all of the prosecutable evidence. But yet you get somebody on TV saying, I swear on my pillow we're melting the prison bars. It was PCAPs, and they raised $18.3 million. And you'll probably elect them governor. But when it comes to the actual prosecutable evidence, not a peep. People don't care. And it's the only thing that proves what happened. That's irrefutable, bulletproof. This is the system we live in. They want to make sure they've got to keep that little bitty blue command center alive. And Penny, God bless you. I'd give you full tongue kiss if I was there right now. Well, I'd give it to you anyway, but thank you. It's all to keep you away from a very tiny command and control center that is so easy because it only takes 7 states, 7 counties. They won't turn over the voter rolls. They all have mail-in ballots and they have drop boxes and they're flooded with illegals and they got it in the system. They control everything. And in most of those states, the very people that are doing this control and keeping it in are conservatives, you swear, are patriots. And then when you understand the evidence trail, when you finally get down to it, 30 white hats saved the election. In order to have done that, it means those 30 white hats would have had to be in the system, every fucking transaction, every fucking ballot, to be able to determine, the machine switched it, let's switch it back. But see, you can't comprehend that. Why can't you comprehend what it really takes? It's because people really don't understand how all these systems work, and you think it's a real thing because that's what white hats do. But then you can't even connect. There's no named white hats. Or the expert sources are, an anonymous Venezuelan. And why do you go to the country? Because they don't want you to look in this country where it's actually done. Now, I can tell you this, President Trump is fighting with every tool he has. But I understand in 2020, there were 2 rigs. It wasn't just the system pulling the trigger. It was everybody came riding a white horse and everything got corralled in the midst of bad information. And if you talked about how it really was done, like Marley Hornick and the voter roll, the actual voter rolls, here it is, here's how it's done. Those are the people they ran out of town and took over their efforts and pushed you to the machines. Harry Hursty, who is the one that booted out Marley in New York and all her hard work, who is he? The guy that convinces you the machines can be switched. And who are the very people that shut down the singular mechanisms to fix this? Clean the voter rolls, whatever, are the very rhinos in place that aren't going to vote for it. Why? Because they're part of the control and command. Now, they get a double payoff in this because you swear to God you filled out an affidavit and no courts will look at it. They must be bad. They must be horrible. The system needs chaos. They need all the, they can't, look, if you focus in on the laser dot, they're fucked. So they need the chaos. That's what feeds the system. That's what makes this work. And so for every person there, well, it's Q and it's this, and they hung them in Gitmo. Bullshit people don't know their ass from a hole in the ground, designed to keep you from seeing the command and control. And those same people, oh, they were hung in Gitmo. What are same people? I don't care what people think. I don't give a shit what other people think. I know the truth. I'll tell you what. I'll accept that. Watch my YouTube chat. James, come give us all the truth. Here's the one thing I can do. I can listen to anybody. I can dialogue with anybody. I can assume your role, understand how you look at it, and then we can talk about it. See, the truth never worries about getting questioned or cross-examined. Never. Never. But it's always simple moves. I'll give you an example. It's always simple moves. It's like telling you it was the machines and it's fraud. It was the machines and it's fraud. Telling you it's the machine pushes it over to the voluntary voting system guidelines. Telling you fraud, you sign an affidavit, it was fraud. You can't make that determination. It's an irregularity you witnessed. Only courts can decide fraud, but they got you to put fraud in every one of your affidavits, not usable additionally. By the way, all of you that canvass, can you not see this? See, it's a system. They knew the American public would go batshit crazy over what happened in 2020. We only got the Arizona audit. The system fucking terrified. They thought they could run me off. They thought they control it. And I said, fuck you. And I told you, and you made hold their feet to the fire. So they only had a choice. Well, then we got to do everything we can to discredit that team and ignore it. So what filled the other vacuum? Massive forces of people all grouped together in causes all across America to tell you, no, it was the machines. And the people that led that all connect to one group. Every one of them connect to one group. Every one of them connect to one group. If you dare talk about no folds, even for those who have tried, what happened to you? You got shunned, ostracized, and pushed out of the group. If you were willing to talk about 6-degree polynomials and dominion and stuff, you were fucking in. What they did is there's only two resources in this. When America fights, in order for Americans to win, Americans have to group together. We got the Arizona audit because Americans grouped together, but the system knew what was coming. They knew what we would find. when they understood the power of the technology created, they knew they couldn't hide it. So they had to come up with an alternative plan. Boom, what comes out of nowhere? Canvassing, all these other initiatives, be on our team, sign NDAs or whatever. What happened to any of that work? Any of that work? Number one, none of it ever released in a usable, prosecutable evidence format. Everybody that volunteered signed an NDA so they could not discuss what they saw as an individual. None of the canvassing stuff went forward. All of the cases got thrown out, but you had to focus on the machines and stuff, and that's what got promoted. That is 100% by design. Do you think a system that is willing to go that far to change the destiny of America would only focus and concentrate its efforts on the liberal side? No. The whole time there's operatives on the right to make sure when America came together, because you all came together to make it happen. They saw the power when you decided we are fucking doing this full forensic audit. They even debated, well, that's not really a full forensic. It's not this and this and this and this and this. Bullshit. Propped up all these people, and the bulk of the money, the bulk of the spend, the bulk of the interviews was to get you to look at the machines. Did they promote the paper? Did they promote the paper finds? They'll say Jovan's a genius, but did they promote the paper finds? The actual changes of how the system did it. They ran in the ballot slate. No, all of that was hidden from you. All of it was hidden from you. And you should recognize that the right does this too, when all of a sudden the one person that was leaking at the forensic audit, Ken Bennett, was the very first speaker on the results, and the final one, he says, well, the most significant outcome of the finding was the votes were basically there. It was not very many. Biden got a few more. And that's what he led with. And that's a Republican who was the Secretary of State in Arizona, who put in all of the mail-in ballot drop box laws to begin with in Arizona. But everybody misses that. And now you're asking 6 years later, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What we can do? I'm going to tell you one thing. What I've told you has never changed. The only difference between now and then is what I told you has come to pass and been verified multiples of ways. And even the things that they wanted to convince you is outlandish, like all the Social Security shit, all the illegal shit, you now know is country. That's the only thing that's changed on my side of the equation. You now have 1,000 points of light cross-confirming it. But what did the big pundits, the big whatever, even on the right, did they cover it? No, because see, that command and control dot has more influence than you can imagine, because you got to stop thinking about it as the left. It's not. It's a system. And so those big, powerful conservatives, they pick up the phone, they get people and said, you can't do Jovan stuff, you can't talk about it. If you do, we're not going to give you people an interview. And what happens? The whole system stands down. Where's John? John, I sent you a link. Come on. They were hung at the courthouse lawn, bro. Mustang Medic reported it. Fuck the elections. They've been fraudulent since. Let me get this right. Let me just get this right. John won't come on and defend what he. This is how it works. I want to give you an example. We are sitting here right now, and somebody is swearing to God 93 people, whatever, were hung on the courthouse steps. His source, Mustang Medic, reported on it. Do you see how feeble we are as a cohesive nation? You swear it's the truth because you heard a podcaster say it. Hang on one second. Let me just ask a question, because I don't know this. I don't know who Mustang Medic is. But I'm going to ask a question. Let's just chase this one down because James won't join me. James, everybody learns together. I take you at face. Okay, here you go. Mustang Medic, online handle of William Wheating, an American YouTuber, podcaster, and political commentator. He originally built a large YouTube of 157,000 subscribers. He's a firefighter and an EMT. Okay, hang on. So again, I just want to let you know, somebody's saying the proof is I heard it on Mustang Medic. I don't know who Mustang Medic is, but let's just chase this down. Let's just chase this down. He was a firefighter EMT. He did Senate-related appearances as an EMT firefighter, reference wearing a duty belt for 30 years in that role. But he has never claimed to being a paramedic, nurse, or physician or hold any medical license. A firefighter, an EMT. Okay, so now I'm going to vet medical credentials. But see, here's the deal. You find a face you like. Now I understand, look, God gave me a face that makes it look like I want to beat your fucking ass versus teach your ass. Right? Can't find Bill Wedding's EMT stuff. Doesn't matter. He's mentioned Arizona, California, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. There's no matching or historical EMT certification in the National Registry of EMTs. There's none. Can't be verified. He's only self-reported. So I just have you a question. Here's the question. I'm sitting here. You can verify my background all the way back going to when I was 15. You have my background 45 years long. I can show you each ballot, each transaction, etc. But what you claim is your proof of why you're standing strong on it is because the medic reported on it. This is, in many ways, this is what the system knows. The system knows people choose favorites because people are tribal. They know that they can go kind of all over the places. Okay, but let's trace this down. Where would Mr. Medic get his election information? Where would the medic get his exact information? See, this is my point, folks. This is my point. Let's say they put someone forth says, I looked at every house in every neighborhood and every Republican voter registration and Democrat voter registration and independent registration. And for the people moving in and the people moving out, it shouldn't balance out to this. And therefore, I guesstimate that there's probably 6% of this is not true. Now, let me ask you a question. Is that allowed in court? No. It's not. Because it's not empirical factual data. But think about who collectively a lot of people follow. People follow a man whose name is not 107. But all of a sudden is this incredible empirical source of facts. See, folks, all they did was hot swap us. We knew the posh, proper, propped up mainstream media was full of shit. When they realized people online started talking about this stuff, because we now have all social media, they pick and chose and inserted people to now come to you and swear to God they're massively important, they know this, and have super secret info. And it's all a con. Most of those people are driven by money. They're making more money doing this than they've ever made in their life, have nothing to show for their life. But what they do for the system is they keep people confused. And you swear by it. You actually swear by it. Right? They swear by it. We're millions of dollars in debt, bringing, creating, and showing this proof with empirical technology irrefuted. My own money. But yet, you got sold, we're grifters. Why wouldn't you think raising $18.3 million for a defense fund, admitting in court that PCAPs never existed, and then magically that billion-dollar suit gets dropped? How's that not grifting? And by the way, if I'm a grifter, I'm pretty shitty at it. But see, people key into words. They key into personalities. You don't want to realize it is a two-sided, all-inclusive system and a very tiny control and command central. You want to buy that, well, machines did it, or Q's got it, or the Army's got it, when they added 7 more million votes after the election to Kamala. And the numbers lay over each other, where Joe ultimately ran up to, and they reconfirmed him by Kamala. Therefore, they reconfirmed him on the voter rolls. No, that's a real voter. Look, they've voted multiple times. So what do? If push comes to shove, they'll find a few voters. Well, yeah, they inserted once. It might not good. They're dead. But you got millions in there that they used again and again in the system because they got them there in the first place. And therefore, they use that as valid. Just because they show they have a vote multiple times, it doesn't make them legitimate. But what do they tell you? Don't bother with the voting rolls. It's like sweeping a dirt floor. Let me see what other questions I missed. Hang on. Benji, I saw your request for your stuff. I haven't read it. I can't. That's not the topic. I'll read up on it, brother. And if it makes sense to me, we can. We will lose Congress. They will impeach Trump. That's my belief. I've told you that consistently. That's the plan. Let me tell you why it's a plan that goes against Trump. You've got to understand, we the people heard Donald Trump. The elites were so fucking arrogant that they thought we would dismiss Donald Trump as a TV character, that we would believe they're mocking. But see, the one thing you can do for Donald Trump is you can go way back even to the beginning. He's always said the same thing. He's always had the same values, always. It's always the same. Well, all of a sudden, the system thought they had it with Hillary, and Trump kicks their ass. They go, we can never have this happen again. Now, is it about Trump? President Trump told you this. It's about us. See, America got Trump in. So now they have two problems. And this is, so you have to understand critical theory on this, okay? Once Trump got in, they now had a two-part problem. You got to go back in time and you got to peel it. When Trump was first running, the GOP was panicking that he would be able to create a brand new party. Go back and look. They were begging him, and Trump's telling him, I'm not a Republican. I'm not signing on as a Republican. Then the GOP came in and said, we got the list, we got the funds, we got this. You need to run as a Republican. We got to do it for America. So President Trump officially signed and became a member of the Republican Party, the GOP. Now, once the candidate becomes a member of the party forever controls that likeness and name. You see it every day, but you don't even know where to look. You get all these money-raising efforts. You swear they're from President Trump because they use his photo and they use a headline and it's a message from President Trump. You know what you don't do? You don't get past the emotions and you don't scroll down to the very, very, very end of that. And you'll find there's 200 or 300 organizations that are GOP crap that the money really goes to them, not Trump. They're just using Trump's name to raise money. And you don't even know that happens. And so the system must kill three things. Now, what did they kill during this process? If you were an attorney and you saw this happen and you basically came out and said, I'm going to represent these people that have claims, what did they do? The system filed ethics complaints against attorneys. An attorney cannot let an ethic complaint go. It's like a death knell for an attorney to have an ethic complaint. So the attorney has to stop and they have to fight the ethics complaint. They've got 30 days. If they don't fight the ethics complaint, it's going to be very hard for them to get clients and eventually they can be removed. So what did that tell all of the attorneys across the United States of America? Don't take on anything with elections. That's how that one worked. Next, when they knew we were going to get a full forensic audit and we would find this shit, they tried every way they could to stop the audit. It didn't work. Even when they basically said, you can see the email, it's public record. We'll give Jovan a few and look at it. And if we find something, then we'll let them do them all. I said, fuck you. I will do them all or I will do nothing. Because I'm not attaching my name to a little bitty sample. I'm not doing this work for a little bitty sample. They thought they were rid of me. I said, but you got to remember one thing. I'm going to tell the people that you're pulling this con after you told them they'd do a full forensic audit. 60,000 of you called and moved the Senate, and they had to cough all of them up. But then what they do, they inserted their people, operatives, GOP operatives, into the audits and assigned them as the people that will talk about it. What did those operatives do? They worked to discredit it from the beginning to make sure certain facts weren't known. Even down to the audit, everybody except me, everybody except my team had to sign agreements that the Senate gets to control what's released. I said, fuck you. Because that was the second thing they tried. I own the patents. This is my technology. All of this data is expressed so you can see it. I own every bit of it. You own none of my work. Well, you can't do that. I said, I'm not signing it. So what's the next rumor they put on the street? Jovan's trying to sabotage the Arizona audit. He's trying to sabotage it, make sure it doesn't happen. Fuck no, I'm not playing their game. And you wouldn't know any of this shit if I would have agreed to it. But I was within my legal right. I'm sorry. It's patented. That's what I do. You don't own shit of my work. So we fought that hurdle. They insert their attorneys. That attorney starts, all that attorney focused on. You go back and look at Blim's stuff. The primary things he talked about, played like he was a system, but all he did was bash me. That made sure I could never appear in court because he was the only attorney, supposedly, out of 15,000 in Arizona that would take an election case, and he took it, all propped up. With the design, you can't use Jovan stuff. Then Arizona, when it came to other Kerry Lake stuff, they propped up an office manager, they propped up this, but they had only one rule for those secondary audits. Do you remember what the one rule for the secondary audits was? with Kari Lake stuff, you cannot share information with Jovan. You cannot cooperate with Jovan. That was a rule. Why? They didn't want anything being real and they had to control it all. And then in the midst of all of this shit of the system telling you the election was farce and audits were farce, magically that office manager who couldn't even testify in court because she didn't have a background magically appears on 60 Minutes. 2 people appeared on 60 Minutes. Brnovich, who did nothing about it, saying it was all a joke, it was all a con, liar. And this office manager at a medical office, now auditor, and they're doing a profile on her on 60 Minutes. And then you look at the other commonalities, as tons of people, Dave Jose and others, we're all fighting for Kari Lake. We're all fighting for Kari Lake. Kari Lake and I both have something common. They offered a tremendous amount of money to walk away. Both of us said no. I'm sharing with Kari the information. She knows it. The attorneys are controlled by Lindell. She gives me the names of the attorneys supporting. We take each of those individual attorneys and we prep them on everything. And what did those attorneys say collectively? Holy shit. This is huge. What do they have to do? They have to report up to Kurt Olson, who's Mike Lindell's attorney, and they got to show this data. I prepped Mike Lindell. He goes, oh my God, he did the thing. But what happened? Every one of those attorneys got dismissed. Is that a coincidence? It's not a coincidence, folks. And this is where the system knows it. You will pick and choose sides. You will pick and choose faces. We just had this dialogue. Oh, I heard the medical medic of medic said it. Right? Somebody's saying, I don't follow long-winded BS, but they're still sitting here. People are weak. Inherently, people are weak. And the system exploits our collective weakness. Somebody says, why did Kari Lake let all that happen? Let's unpack that. Let's unpack that. Did Kari Lake let it happen? No. Why? Because Kari Lake didn't control representation. Do you think Kari Lake had the $10 million to drop to file the suits and prosecute them? No. Do you think Kari Lake would go pro se and on her own in court? She'd be a fucking fool. Anybody would. So no. Somebody steps up, I'll pay it. Mike Lindell. Who really controlled the process? Mike Lindell and his chosen attorney. Not Kari Lake. Not Kari Lake. You can see the writing on the wall right now. Kari Lake is up for the ambassadorship of Jamaica. Right? She's the only ambassador thrown into the mix with these approvals that went through with Tillis. Should have all had him signed. He intentionally left her name out so she wouldn't get approved as his final screw you to President Trump because he's gone in January. They're doing all they can to make sure somebody as tough as right on as Kari Lake doesn't get across the finish line. Don't you understand it? Because she too agreed. I'm not playing by your fucking rules. Who do they put across the finish line? People that will play the party line. You're watching it go on right now in Minnesota. The person who swore to the world he had it all is the one that amplified Antifa's Zoom call, got it out, is the one that picked up the phones and got this other guy interviewed, which became his second, but magically his suits dropped. He admitted in court he never had it and it was all this, but now he's up for a governorship in Minnesota. That's payment in my book. So let me get this right. You're going to take a convicted, drug-addicted, crack addict, continual addict that popped up and all of a sudden is election expert, that completely got everybody corralled under his umbrella, made sure they marched to one beat, but you swear he was conned because he's a godly man. Mike doesn't even have a mustache, and you don't even know it. Yeah, it's his look, but not what he looks like in real life. And after all that, all of it, the main amplification of the It's Dominion system that got everybody to say it, he's the one they let off the hook? While other people still are paying off millions of judgments, but he's left off the hook, and now he's going to be given a governorship. And now when you see him in a governorship, he wants to allow Somalis and validate them and give them green cards and everything else. It's totally opposite of what you expect of everything he said. But you forget that because you believe in the mythology, the curated image, versus actual facts. This is how the system pushes and pulls us. The biggest deception we got in was we all of a sudden, we have new heroes, but the system told us who those heroes would be. The system chose the very heroes you follow. And if you put all those heroes in a room and you just started looking at, well, who brought that person in and who brought that person in and who brought that person in, it's all the same group. It's all the same people. But what gets amplified? It's Serbia, it's Venezuela, it's Dominion, it's this. The opposite of what President Trump focuses on. And now we're headed into a midterms, and all the same people and all the same groups are now questioning President Trump. Did he mislead us? Did he do this? Right? Because they gathered followers that they're great American heroes. And once you decide to follow someone, now this is the emotional side of it. I turn off a lot of people because I'm very direct and I'm very transparent. I accept that. But I'm okay with who I am and I'm okay with what we found, and that's why it is what it is. But I don't see myself, I'm not an influencer. I'm not even a podcaster. Yeah, I got media to my belt, but I've always been a teacher. Here it is. Here's the facts. Here's how you verify it. Here's how you do it. Everything's being chosen for us. Everything's playing out before us. But going back to President Trump, why are they doing that? Because they have to kill two things. You understand when they get an impeachment this next time around against President Trump, you understand MAGA's over. Doesn't mean the theme of MAGA. No, see, they had to kill so many new things. They had to kill. We can't let people do full forensic audits. They killed it. They had to make sure, no, we got to keep this illegal racket going. You can't do the voter rolls. You can't do this. They killed it. You can't have signature verification. They killed it. They got to get rid of President Trump. But in getting rid of President Trump and convincing you he's bad and impeaching him, what do they get to do? Forever discredit MAGA. And what is MAGA? The people coming together to change the system. Everything is about making sure all the ways that people come together and finally fight for truth, they got to kill it. The PCAPS machine shut alone killed election integrity. You never knew of the term. You never knew as much as you knew about elections till we all started discussing this. They realized, oh shit, the public's going to wake up and they're going to dive into it. So we got to control it. So what do? They give you fake little gods, fake little things to follow. You put your faith in it. You follow it blindly until you ultimately find out you can't move the ball and it all got discredited. What'd they do to you? They discredit you along with it. And because you volunteered your time, all that canvassing, all that stuff, and nothing happened, you never saw a report, it was solely to motivate and punish you. Don't you ever sign up to participate again. It's useless. So you got to understand, this is it's a self-affirming, discrediting system. All the same people in on it interview each other. It's now become circular. They brought people in power to lead so they could get you to them. Once they got them to them, knew they had them locked in, all of those people turned. What are they all unanimously turning against? Trump, MAGA's dead, we're controlled by Israel, Trump's a criminal. They've all unanimously turned. But see, you raised them up by following them. And now all the people in their circles, all they do is continually interview each other. That's how it all works. It's simple formulas, always focused in trying to keep control of power, trying to make sure they stay in office. But the control mechanism that actually does it is very, very tiny. And they've got to do everything they can do to keep you away from the control mechanism. Now, I've told you this for years. You're about to see it. Some people are saying, is anything going to happen to these people? No. Yes, John Wells and stuff, it's all the same circle. It is a circle of influence. Bring in the names, sell the same shit. Same election integrity people, same fighters, but all this circular group. It's a circle now. They got to give you the impression of authority because it's big names you recognize, but it's all the same names interviewing the same people in a circle. That's how they keep this circle going. And they only have to keep it going to the midterms. That's all they have to do. For me, coming up with kinematic artifact detection to really understand the state of the ballot involves no theory. It involves physical motion evidence. That's kinematics. What motions did this paper go through? That's it. There's no theory involved. There's no weird fucking polynomials that you have to understand. It either was a legal ballot voted legally, or it was a legal ballot voted illegally, or it was an illegal ballot. The paper tells on itself. You can't change that. The problem is the system has become too rich raping us, which is why we're at a very interesting crossroads, because we're trapped in chaos. We're trapped like nobody is the judges don't even care. No, the judges are actually applying rule of law, and you think they're all crooked. That's what the system needs you to think. Do you know why the system needs you to think every judge is crooked? I want you to think of this. You now know the majority of all the stuff was dismissed in a court of law because they made everybody do it in a way that you think the courts were refusing to see the evidence. No, the court was ruling on actual law of what is evidence. But see, they told you all the courts are bought off, all this is bought off. Do you understand what their play is yet with that? What are they doing? I want to see if you can see it. What can you see? People are saying the judges are in on it. I'm telling you, there are some bad judges, yes. The broad strokes that the judges are hiding this and all the judges are bad, which is what you're being sold. What is the goal of that? So they've convinced you all lawmakers are bad, and a lot of them are, and they're making tons of fucking money. They made sure the real evidence doesn't get to court. You now know how they did that. But they got to convince you that our legal system on top of our politician is broken. Why do they need that? It's all based on chaos and loss of trust. But what's the final linchpin they're going after? There's one thing that happens before you give up. We've got chaos. They made sure none of it made to court. They made sure it was the wrong format. They've sold you the chaos. They've sold you President Trump's bad, that all of it's rigged, that all of them bad, right? There's one thing that happens before you finally fuck it and say give up. What is it? You will naturally think we got to tear it all down. And to tear it all down, what has to happen? Put your thinking cap on. They convince you all the system is broke. They convince you all the judges are in on it. Not true. They convince you all the election people are in on it. Not true. They convince you it's done at the machine level. Not true. What do they need? Civil war. This is the final pin. Why do they need a civil war? To get the one thing they must get, and that is our guns. So you got to understand, we are the last defense. They know it. But this is while all the bad people are in. They fucking know it. And that's why influencers are telling you, we got to get our guns, we got to get in our streets. They need that. Why do they need that? They need it to repeal our Second Amendment. And when our Second Amendment is gone, we are England as well. And I've told you that from the beginning. And that's the entire playbook. Keep pissing you off. Keep pissing you off. Keep misleading. Keep giving you false hero. Keep giving you false hopes. Make you think everything's broken. Make you think every fucking judge is corrupt. Make you think every fucking lawyer is corrupt. Control, control, control. Because there's one final thing before you finally give up. Give up is fucking giving in and laying down. There's one final thing. You're fucking American and you own guns. They need a war here. They need you to lose your cool. They keep on egging you on. They need you to lose your cool, and they need you to do exactly what you know liberals do. Think emotionally. They've got to take you, a conservative who doesn't think emotionally, you think predominantly rationally. They already control the liberals, all emotion, all emotion, all emotion. But they got to drive you to the emotion side. It's a longer process with a conservative. A liberal is worried about their image and how am I going to look, and boy, I got to be liked and I got to come along. You don't give a shit about that shit. So they have to use a different tactic. And what's the different tactic? To make you think all is lost. To push you to that final act. Getting your guns and getting in the streets. And they only need that for one reason. And that's why they're stoking that. That's why they have podcasters telling you, got to get in the street, got to get the other, got to get your guns. We need militia. That's why that messaging is there. It's seeding your brain. And they need the flashpoint to happen because America still doesn't fall until they can repeal our right of gun ownership, which they have been after forever. These rat bastards never give up. That's why you can't even plink anymore out in the field because of the taxes on the bullets. They couldn't get the guns, so they priced the bullets out of oblivion. You can't reload because they basically regulated primers. It's all about our guns, folks. This is why I have always promoted stay calm, stay focused, understand where the enemy is, and what you have to do is you have to get people to see the psychological warfare for what it is. Do not get emotional about it. And that's hard. I even get emotional about it. But it comes down to discipline. Stay the course. Call it out. Know your shit. Know how it works. Know how to defend it. And you stand your ground with knowledge. Your mission should not be to fight the system. Your mission should be to educate those around you on the real truth so they become warriors for truth. We need people to see it for what it is. Once we reach critical mass, not seeing it's broken, but seeing the mechanisms of how they stay in power. Once you see it for what it is and you stay rock solid in the truth, that's where you become dangerous in the system. And what you should have learned through all of this stuff with audits, they always fight you getting together, standing in truth. That's why they got to destroy MAGA. That's the control mechanism. So for me, and I've told you this, and I'm going to go back to my words, none of this fucking matters until they cross your threshold at home when it comes to getting your gun. It's the same thing I told you way back in 2020. Don't you dare set foot in DC, even if you support Trump. Don't go there. It's a trap. I told you. They needed that. And they took emotions, got people there, set it up, and fucking used it. That's the game. I'm asking you to live in truth. I'm asking you to live in knowledge. I'm asking you to understand you don't fight the system. You fight to educate your brothers and sisters on what truth is, help them understand and understand it clearly. And then your only job is to share the truth and facts so everybody sees it clearly. Understand what the pressure points are, understand what the buttons are, understand where they're moving us. Once you see it clearly, they can't pull it back. That's why it's all about information suppression. They cannot afford you to see the truth. That's the one thing they cannot overcome in mass. And that's why they give you so many things to chase. Trump's still president. Military, they need you to do it all because it's all going to crash and burn. Because they need to basically have you crash and burn and become emotional, get your gun, and it's all over. And that is the one thing that will make our constitutional republic fail. Nothing else. Nothing else. Because staying in this battle with knowledge and continually chipping away at that hard-ass rock and focusing on our brothers and sisters around us, not the politicians. See, when enough people learn how it really works, then you learn what you need to know. Audit everything. Audit who you follow. Somebody's fucking making a stand because they heard the magic medic or whatever do it. And they're fucking bullshit. Bullshit. You audit your lawmakers. You audit people's words. You audit their track records. You audit their backgrounds. And you understand the one thing. What the system keeps promoting is by default approved by the system that wants to control you. And that's why advertising works. And that's why everything's driven off of that. You got to break free of that cycle. Now, I predict we're going to have problems in the midterm. I told you this the whole way. And it's going to be a powder keg. But that's why the information for the audit has to survive. They never accounted me staying in audit mode. They never accounted for it. This is truth, period. They need that truth to disappear. It's a game of trying to wear us all out. That's how all of this works. Audit yourself. Why do you follow the people you follow? Honestly. And if your answer is, I like them, you're misled. Because what you didn't do is you didn't hold the people you follow to an impeccable standard of truth and transparency while we're in a war. You're just following them because you like them. And you know what? Everybody loved Charlie Manson, who followed him and followed him right to fucking prison. Because they didn't audit the character, the background, the results, and the intention. They just got enamored in the fucking words. And that's how every bit of this works. I hope some of this helps. I appreciate you all. The midterm's going to be hell, folks. It is going to be hell. And they're going to, between now and then, they're going to try to convince you that Trump is bad, that Trump is horrible, and they're going to try to convince you that because they need you to believe that what's about to happen in the midterms was Trump's fault. And they need you to believe it was Trump's fault and that Trump failed, so the system, the two-party system, can permanently kill MAGA, because if they can get rid of Trump, MAGA goes with it. And that's their plan. Truth is the only thing that sets us free, and you know it. I love you all. Share this program.
The upcoming 2026 midterms could be a bloodbath for Republicans? How? Consider this. On Election Day 2008, Barack Obama received 69 million votes. In his second term, he racked up 65 million votes, and he was considered the Democrat rock star president. Then Hillary ran against Donald Trump. She received the same 65 million votes. But come 2020, Joe Biden supposedly received 81 million votes. Was he really more popular than Obama or Hillary? Of course not. But that is not the half of it. In the 2024 election, Kamala Harris received 68 million votes. But did you know that now it's almost 2 years after that election, and somehow Kamala Harris has been elevated to over 75 million votes? How does a candidate get 8 million more votes after the election? Is this an attempt to validate the fraudulent 81 million vote fantasy from 2020? You bet. One thing stands between chaos and correcting history, and that is the historic 2020 full forensic archive of Maricopa County, Arizona. The single most detailed full audit of a presidential election in American history, audited over 2 million ballots, generated over 20,895,000 individual proof files. This took 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. This evidence must be kept for any and all future court cases, Supreme Court cases, and preserved for all time, eventually at the Trump Presidential Library. That is why we need you. You, the people, made this history happen, and now you, the people, can have a hand in making sure this evidence is saved for future generations. Please donate. Please help us. Donate now to continue to preserve in a chain of custody state of the only legal court-ready evidence of the 2020 election disaster, the 2.1 million physical ballots, the single largest forensic audit of a presidential election in American history. Please donate now and preserve history.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets trembling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land under the fray, and the home of the brave? Because we are the brave. Yes, we are the brave. We'll fight you in the name of the brave. We are the US of A. For those unaware, that flag is still there. It's our future to save. This land of the brave, the US of A. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, in the home of the
Are data centers going to destroy America? Will data centers and artificial intelligence rob our water supplies? Will it drive up our energy costs? What's fact? What's fiction? Here's the truth no one talks about. America must win the AI data center war or surrender the future to the great dragon. Award-winning, four-time best-selling author, technology pioneer and futurist, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer presents the definitive manual for winning this war against China, the three-toed dragon. Communist China's secret war to end American AI and data centers. China's relentless drive for AI dominance is no longer a distant threat. Through massive state-backed infrastructure, voracious energy consumption, and strategic control of global supply chains. The CCP is building an unstoppable technological empire. While America debates policy, China executes. This is not another tech trend. It is the decisive battlefield of the 21st century where data centers, power generation, cooling systems, and sovereign energy infrastructure will determine who controls intelligence, economic supremacy, and national security. This fact book, guidebook, handbook, and war plan cuts through the noise with meticulously researched intelligence on the hidden realities of AI data center demands. Exploding power requirements, industrial-scale water usage, heat island effects, liquid cooling breakthroughs, hydrogen and off-grid solutions, semiconductor vulnerabilities, and the strategic choke points China already exploits. It delivers actionable blueprints for American victory, from policy recommendations and energy independence strategies to practical deployment models for rural and sovereign systems that bypass fragile grids and foreign dependencies. For patriots, policymakers, energy entrepreneurs, technologists, and every citizen who refuses to live under digital authoritarianism, this is the essential field manual. America still holds the innovation edge, the resource base, and the will, but only if we act with urgency and clarity. The Great Dragon is moving at full speed. The time to seize victory in the AI data center war is now. Available on Amazon, hardbound, paperback, and ebook. Read it. Arm yourself. Win.